Okay, the Committee on Finance will come to order in our committee briefing. This morning we have the Department of Accounting and General Services. Good morning, welcome. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Thank you very much for having us here this afternoon. Wanted to start by wishing everyone a very happy new year. Hope you all had a restful holiday season and looking forward to us moving forward in this next session. I would just like to just mention, my name is Keith Regan, Comptroller and Director for the Department of Accounting and General Services. We really appreciate the opportunity to be before this committee again, almost 1 year, I think, since the last time we were here before you, where we presented our last biennium budget. And we do have some requests that have been included as part of our fiscal year 25 supplemental budget. And we look forward to answering any questions that you or the committee may have regarding the submittals that we have provided to you. Chair, I would like to just, if you could indulge me for a moment, I'd like to introduce some of our DAGS team that is here with us, if that would be okay.
Please.
Thank you, Chair. To my right, I'd like to introduce Myo-Ling Silliman. Myo-Ling is my Deputy Comptroller. She's a very, very important part of what we do at the department. She is my right hand. She makes sure that she keeps me on the right track and on the right path to make sure that things get done. She's just been an amazing asset for the department, and I'm so fortunate and blessed to have her as the Deputy Comptroller, and I just thank her for putting up with me. Thank you very much, Myo-Ling, for all that you do for the department. Just in order of program IDs that are here joining us today, we have from our accounting division, our accounting administrator, Lydia Nash. And I would ask that our staff just stand and wave. Lydia actually started in this role on October 16, 2023, so she's relatively new as our accounting administrator, but she has many, many years of working within the accounting division itself, and so she brings just a wealth of knowledge and experience to the team. From AGS 104, our audit division, we have Audit Administrator Ron Shige. From AGS 105, our Office of Information Practices, Director Cheryl Kakazu Park. From our Archives division, our Archives Administrator, or State Archivist, Dr. Adam Jansen. From our Office of Enterprise Technology Services, AGS 131, our Chief Information Officer, Doug Murdoch. From our Risk Management Office, AGS 203, our Risk Management Officer, Tracy Kitaoka. From our Land Survey Division, AGS 211, Administrator Reed Surratt. From our Public Works Division, AGS 221, our Acting Administrator, Gordon Wood. He's acting as of January 1st. Many of you probably remember Chris Kinimaka, who was with the department for many, many decades. She recently retired as of the end of December, and so we have some big shoes to fill there with Chris's departure, but Gordon has served diligently as Chris's right hand, or one of her many right hands within the division, and so we're just very fortunate that he stepped up to serve as acting administrator. We have from Central Services Division, AGS 231, Administrator Jimmy or James Kurata. James is also a new face to the department. He started back in August of 2023. He had been with DAGS actually, and then he moved over to DLNR and then decided to come back to us. So we're very fortunate to have his expertise back in-house at CSD. From our State Procurement Office, AGS 240, we have Acting State Procurement Administrator Bonnie Kahakui. From our Automotive Management Division, AGS 251, we have Administrator Michael Arakaki. From our Hawaii District Office, Acting Administrator Roger Ross. From our Kauai District Office, Administrator and Engineering Program Manager Eric Agena. And from our Maui District Office, we have Administrator and Engineering Program Manager Jeff Pearson. I do want to mention just something very quickly, Chair. You know, Jeff and his team on Maui played an incredible role in support of the Maui wildfire response for the department. Jeff really, sacrificed time and just, everything you can imagine to make sure that whatever we could do from the department side to support those who had suffered loss were taken care of. I wanted to mention also in our testimony, our written testimony, we had mentioned that we estimated about 60 man hours. That was actually an error. It was 600 man hours that were put in by our team there at DAGS on Maui. And I just want to say how appreciative we are to Jeff and his team for going above and beyond to make sure that we could get those warehouses stood up on Maui. If you're familiar with some of that stuff that happened, it's all thanks to them. From AGS 871, we have our Campaign Spending Commission Executive Director, Kristen Izumi Nitao. From our Office of Elections, Chief Elections Officer, Scott Nago. From our State Foundation on Culture and Arts, we have Executive Director Karen Ewald. And I think we have our King Kamehameha Celebration Commission Executive Director Amy Hammond here as well. If not, hopefully she shows up here. And then from our Enhanced 911 Board, we have Executive Director Royce Murakami. And from AGS 901, which is the Comptroller's Office, we have our Planning and Policy Analyst, Tony Benabisi. Our ASO, Administrative Services Office, Acting Business Management Officer, Cassandra Toyofuku. Our Management Analyst, Miyoki Ng, and our other Management Analyst, Andrew Choi. And from our Personnel Office, we have our Department Human Resource Officer, Daylene Liu, and our Systems and Procedures Office Administrator, Derek Soritani. These people behind me, everyone that I've introduced, and some that I don't have on my list that are here, are critical to DAGS's ability to be able to service the needs of both our internal and external customers. Chair and members, like I mentioned, we were before you about a year ago, and our team has been working diligently to serve all of those who depend on the broad range of services provided by our 8 divisions, our 3 neighbor island district offices, and our 11 attached agencies and programs. As reflected in the introduction of our team, the responsibilities assigned to our department are diverse, including answering cell phones. These responsibilities include ensuring that we maintain the integrity and functionality of our accounting system, preserving and protecting critically important documents, repairing and maintaining the hundreds of facilities assigned to us so that departments are able to deliver their services, managing and securing parking for our employees and the public, planning, designing, and constructing facilities, completing land surveys to properly document lands owned and operated by the state, and overseeing the statewide implementation of IT initiatives, including modernization. These are just a few examples of the variety of services we deliver day in and day out. We're truly a department created to serve a vast array of needs throughout our state, and we do this with the more than 800 authorized positions and $240 million in operating funds that have been so graciously provided to us by this body and by our governor. I feel it's necessary for me just to extend my gratitude to each and every one of our DAGS team members for their outstanding service and their ongoing commitment and dedication to the work they perform for our state. Mahalo. Chair, you have our written testimony, and for the purposes of our briefing today, I rather than read the testimony verbatim as provided, I'd like to just offer some brief remarks on some of the major topics that you see threaded through our supplemental request. Deferred maintenance was something that we spoke about the last time that I was here in front of this body, and although we don't have a specific additional request for funds to increase our lump sum repair and maintenance, the aging of our facilities continue to be of high priority for us. The $100 million that was provided to DAGS in our current fiscal year 24, and the $15 million that you see in fiscal year 25 will allow our new administrator, Jimmy Kurata, and his team to continue to focus on working on the list of projects that we have and to improve operations overall within Central Services Division. Mr. Kurata has filled critical vacancies within CSD, and we spoke about vacancies the last time we were here, but he has been very active in trying to find people and attract people to join his team at CSD so that we can get the job done. He's actively revamping the tools that are being used to track and assign work so that we can ensure that we're using the funds that are provided to us in the most efficient and effective way. Much of the repair and maintenance work that you see happening throughout facilities assigned to DAGS, including here at this Capitol building, a lot of that is thanks to his leadership and his commitment to addressing the backlog of projects that we have. As our facilities age, so do the systems that we rely on to perform our work. This includes the accounting system that we've relied on now for the past over 50 years, otherwise known as FAMOUS. The state's accounting system is critical infrastructure, not unlike our potable water system or our wastewater system or the electrical grid that we count on day in and day out to just work when we need or expect them to work. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, the system we have that we're using right now is more than 50 years old. written in a language that is no longer taught in schools, making it a challenge for us should Famous fail and we need to write new code to address an error and or on top of that, have to restore a previous version of Famous, and we're not able to because we can't find the internal resource or external resources to be able to accomplish that. The system itself was built on manual processes developed 30 to 40 years before that system was created. So when you think about the way that we're doing business right now with the existing Famous system, that we're actually working off of something that is 80 to 90 years old, right? Which is kind of incredible when you think about it. This important project is part of our supplemental CIP requests, and it is critical if we're to prevent a catastrophic failure of one of the state's most critical internal systems. The current funding request that is in our supplemental budget is for $5 million, but the department's initial request was actually $60 million, and that was based on extensive research and analysis. And this, what I found out is in speaking with the Budget and Finance Director about some of our needs to be able to support this request going forward, we were informed that a governor's message will be coming from the governor that will include the justification for the $60 million request that we had initially asked for as a department. To put this in perspective, just generally about Famous, and I won't go into too much detail, but if Famous were to fail, it would bring all accounting functions within the state of Hawaii that flow through DAGs to a screeching halt and cause immeasurable damage to the state's ability to serve the public, as all transactions would have to be performed manually. I can't even fathom what that would look like. When people ask me what keeps me up at night, this is one of those things that keeps me up at night. Upgrading this software is critical. Modernizing our processes is critical, and your help and support would be greatly appreciated in that process. I also talked a little bit about some of the repair and maintenance issues that we had with schools the last time we were together. In addition to addressing our deferred maintenance and critical system needs, we've also been analyzing how we might be able to do a better job supporting the needs of our neighbor island operations. This includes spending significant time with our Hawaii District Office to determine how we may be able to better serve the needs of the 83 facilities that DAG services on Hawaii Island. Of the 83 facilities, 45 are DOE, so 45 are schools that our Hawaii District Office is responsible for. 13 are libraries, and 25 are other state DAGs managed facilities. The time to travel, if any of you are from Hawaii Island, you know that the time to travel between our East Hawaii office and our West Hawaii office can range anywhere from 1.5 to 2 hours. This makes it extremely difficult for our one Hawaii District Office administrator to be able to properly manage these two major areas and districts on the island. And beyond just those two major areas and districts, you also have smaller communities that have schools within them that have to have, that need servicing. And in order for that administrator to be able to juggle all of that, it becomes extremely difficult. Travel time combined with the sheer number of facilities makes it nearly impossible for one administrator to effectively perform her or his duties. For context, the DOE has 3 complex area superintendents for Hawaii Island. A CAS is essentially the same as what we term a district administrator. Also for context, the Hawaii Island Administrator for DAGs has more facilities assigned to it than Maui and Kauai combined. Maui has 51 facilities, Kauai has 30. So again, as I mentioned, there's 83 facilities that are managed by that one district office administrator. Your help and support in our request to have a second district office for Hawaii Island would be extremely and gratefully appreciated, because we believe that this nominal cost of about $400,000, 6 additional positions, is going to allow us to make some incredible changes on the island of Hawaii. So that's for you, Kristen. Our vacancies, we've talked about this, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. We continue to have issues and challenges with vacancies. You can see that in the table that we've included on our vacancy report. We have done as much as we possibly could to try to address those vacancies in the short period of time between the last time I was here and today. We have been attending various different job fairs. We have been posting on social media. We've been attending various different association meetings, trying to get the word up about all the positions that we have at DAGS, trying to get people excited about wanting to join our engineering team or become a project manager or, just to get involved or, be an accountant within our operations. But it has been a challenge to get people to actually apply and to get them to accept jobs. We've tried things like the Wiki program that I think Dee heard. Either they've already talked to you or they're going to come and talk to you a little bit about that. But that makes the hiring process a little bit easier, more efficient for us to be able to bring in engineers, which we want to try to get them in the door as quickly as possible. But even things like that have been a challenge. It all goes back to, and what we're seeing is salaries, quite frankly. Salaries, benefits, flexibility, being able to do things like telework, which a lot of other employers are allowing, and incorporating that sort of into the operations, I think are things that we need to explore as an organization, as a state. So definitely looking forward to those ongoing conversations that we're going to have about how we can really tackle some of these vacancy issues. It's not a new problem. We've been talking about this for probably a decade or more, but we really need to be able to do something because the job continues to grow, and we need to get the work done. And we're not going to be able to do it unless we actually have people in place. The last thing that I'll just talk about briefly, because then we can go through the table if you'd like on all of the individual requests, but is the $200 million ceiling that you probably saw in our budget requests. It looks like a significant amount of money that we're asking for, and really what this is, it's an increase in the ceiling. We're not asking for any kind of funding. We're not asking for you to put general funds, into that. We're just asking to allow us to have the ceiling so that in the event that the state does receive any kind of monies from our insurance carriers, because we do have claims, right? We have we have one school facility and one library that DAGS directly provided support for over there that were destroyed in the fire. But there are other state facilities that were impacted as well. But in order to receive those monies and then to use those funds to be able to either rebuild the school or rebuild the library or rebuild the other infrastructure that was damaged, we're going to need the ceiling to be able to have access to those funds. And so what you see in there is a request that Budget and Finance work with us on to insert into the budget and what you have before you. And so, Chair, I know I've kind of, I apologize for going on and on about some of the things that we have going on in the department, but I felt it was important just to share these items with you. And I'm happy to go through Table 4 with each and every one of you and to take any questions that you may have, Chair. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Okay, members, we're going to move on to questions at this time. So, are there any questions from the members? Representative Chan.
Hi, thank you, Chair. Hi, Director. I just had two questions. The first one is regarding the 4.5 million for the agricultural warehouses. Are those locations already kind of decided, or is it just preliminary in the planning stages?
Yeah, so that particular project, that's a very interesting project. It landed in DAGS, and our goal is to really just help and work with the Department of Ag, on some of those needs. I'd have to pull it up to take a look and see exactly if whether or not that's been identified in terms of where those projects are going to be taking place.
Okay.
Yeah, I can get back to you on that, Representative.
Okay. And then another question was on in your original department bill submittal, you had a $310,000 ask for the closure of the state capitol parking. And I was just wondering, since it didn't get put into the governor's package, does that have any effect on the public parking in the basement of the Capitol?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that question, Representative. It absolutely does, because some of those funds were to be utilized to prepare other locations for parking. More specifically, if you look at the Vineyard, if you know where the Vineyard parking garage is, there's a vacant lot over there that had been originally targeted for parking. It just had remained vacant over the years. We identified that as a good location to be able to resurface and put some parking stalls. I think we estimated somewhere between 45 to 50 parking stalls that could be created at that one particular location. But in addition to that, we've also been working on trying to we've actually identified parcels nearby that we could potentially have upwards of 400 to maybe even 500 parking stalls for employees in the Capital District, utilizing a shuttle system. That's not included in the 310,000. That was about maybe a $2.5 million proposal. But yeah, I mean, just to get back to the 310, it would have allowed us to more readily move forward with the closure of the State Capitol parking lot.
Okay. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Representative Kobayashi, followed by Keela, followed by Garrett.
To follow up here,
Yes.
why are you doing this ag warehouse? Can you do it better than Department of Ag?
Thank you, Representative. I think because Public Works assists with a lot of the CIP projects, construction projects, that's probably why it ended up, on our list of CIP. Can we do it better than? I would like to think we have some of the most talented and experienced individuals working for us that can do planning, design, and construction, regardless of what type of facility it is. So I think the confidence was there that we could be able to work with the Department of Ag to address their concerns related to some of those ag warehouses.
May I?
Please.
About the $200 million
Yep.
ceiling increase. When you're dealing with money that big, does it matter how much more you add to it? Because it's the ceiling increase. You could in fact get a lot more. You don't know.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Representative. We don't know actually what kind of proceeds the state is going to receive in terms of those claims that we're filing, right, with our insurance
Right.
carriers. So it could be well in excess of that amount. But it's all going to depend in terms of what finally comes out of that process.
And so the $49 million original request,
Yep.
that you don't need?
We actually do need that. The $49 million request was for the premiums that we need to pay for insurance. So we do need those funds so that we can renew our policies in December of this year, right? So we just recently renewed all of our policies. I want to say the total dollar amount for all of that was somewhere around a little over $30 million. That's for our property insurance, our excess liability, cyber insurance, all those things. So year over year, we continue to see increases, right, in those premiums. We're at the point where we need to provide some additional funds into that special fund so that we can cover our premiums going forward. And I appreciate you bringing that up because we probably have to have a little more in-depth conversation just from a policy standpoint to get some guidance from the legislature on what is the appetite of the legislature for risk, right? Because these premiums continue to go up year after year, and at some point in time, the big question is, do we still, like our deductible right now is $1 million, right, for property insurance. Do we have more of an appetite to accept a greater deductible, a larger deductible, right, to bring our premiums down? And
May I suggest that we are not risk managers.
understood.
You have to come to us with the answer with pluses and minuses.
We do actually have those answers. We'd love to have that conversation, though, with all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Keela.
Thank you, Chair. Comptroller, I have a question. With the money right now allocated for the capital improvements here, is everything on track and on target?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. We have a lot of work that's ongoing within the state capitol, and we thank you so much for having the trust and faith in us by putting those monies into that budget. You'll see we're literally wrapping up on the planter project out there in the rotunda. I don't know if you had a chance to go out there and take a look at it, over the last couple of days, but the barriers are coming down, right? Those planters were leaking horrendously into the facility beneath it. That's right on target in terms of being able to get done. Our target was to have everything wrapped up in the rotunda by start of the session. We're on track for that. The pool project that you see, the ongoing work and some of the damage that was caused by the leaks. We're about 90% done in terms of waterproofing, maybe even greater than that on the Diamond Head pool over here. Good news is, with all the rain that we've just had, 0 leaks. So even at 90%, we've addressed all of the major areas within that particular pool where the leaking was coming through. So we're on track. We estimated that we were going to be done with that project before the close of before the start of the session. And we believe we're on track for that. As far as the Everside pool, we are, in terms of the timeline, we're still on track for the timeline to do the work in the next, right after this session ends, we'll start on that particular pool. So, and then beyond that, we've got a bunch of other projects that we're working on within the Capitol. And they are, as far as I know, and as far as I've been told, and I track it a lot because this is a very important, high visibility project for us, our area, Capital District-wise, everything's on track at this time.
So upon the completion of the Diamond Head pool,
Yep.
the barriers come down?
Oh, no, sorry. So what's going to have to happen next is we're going to work on the Eva pool, right? We're going to do basically the same demolition that we did here on the Diamond. I say here because it's like right outside this room. Same kind of demolition work that we did. And then we're going to have to do the same waterproofing work. And then after that, we will begin the process of the final treatment, what it's going to look like, the look and feel of the pool at the end of the day. So, and that is on track. I believe we estimate that we should be done with the entire project by fall of 2026 or sooner. So,
Thank you.
Yep.
And then one more question, Chair. So this one in one of the budget highlights the $470,000. Oh no, sorry, the $275 for the private hybrid cloud. What is that?
I'd have to defer to our Chief Information Officer to provide you a little more insight on that. I don't know if Doug is here. Oh, could you?
We have a version, Doug Murdoch, I'm the State Chief Information Officer. So we have our own cloud here in Hawaii. It's, we call it the government private cloud. So that is for the metal, the machinery that runs that cloud and the software underneath it. We have 3 versions of it, so it has redundancy built in for people that use it. We use it a lot for cybersecurity type controls and things like that. And the cost of leasing those machines has gone up a little bit, so that's why there's more money in the system.
So those cloud systems are independent of what the state implements on our side? Like that's solely for security of the facilities?
It's for security of the internet and for PC security, all the cybersecurity that we run. Office of Election uses the government private cloud, to maintain databases and things like that. So there's a lot of important state information on the government private cloud that we have chosen not to put in the Microsoft cloud or the Google cloud or the Oracle cloud or someplace else. So it's just our wholly owned cloud type environment that we can use for agencies.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Representative Garrett.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Comptroller, good afternoon. Happy New Year. Just wanted to ask you a little bit about the enterprise financial system. So I don't know if Mr. Murdoch has to come back up here, but you mentioned the $5 million request in FY25 on the CIP side, and then you said that there will be a governor's message outlining the need for the justification for the $60 million. Could you just tell us in broad strokes what the $60 million will get in terms of that EFS system and FAMOUS?
Yeah, absolutely. So a large portion of that is going to be part of this business transformation and modernization process. In addition to that, a lot of that's going to be sort of the foundational system integration work that's going to have to happen, right? So, if you look at the $60 million and you were to break it out, I would say that, probably 75% of that is going to be on system integration / the actual software itself, right, that we're going to have to buy some of the licenses for. And then the other 25% or so, and again, these are just very round approximations, would be used for some of the organizational change management that's going to have to occur, because as you know, this is a statewide project, right? And so a lot of the business processes that we have, again, have been around for 80 years, right? And so we're going to have to spend a lot of time working with the departments to make sure that we identify the proper requirements, and that takes just time, effort, and resources. And so a lot of those funds are going to be used to be able to do the project and be successful with that project.
So is the 60 million just basically like a phase one of a much longer term effort?
Yeah, so the 60 million is really, it's going to help us. I wouldn't say it's phase one. It maybe if you think about an ERP in a bigger sort of context, right, beyond just the enterprise financial system, then yeah, maybe that could be this could be like sort of the phase one, if you will, of the ERP. But ERP is going to include things like payroll. It's going to include things like incorporating some of the procurement work and contracting work. It's going to include the budget and finance component, right, the budgeting piece, which needs an overhaul. It's going to include things like some of the federal award management, right, that we have. So, yeah, EFS is like the foundation, if you will, right, for all of this. Because if you don't have a solid financial management system, you run into all kinds of other issues.
Okay, so is this safe to say then if you, so you don't really know what the total project cost would be then, or the timeline until you go through this mapping exercise?
Yeah, we actually have been doing a lot of analysis on costs, right, over the past six to 8 months, right, just so that we can have a better idea of what we think it's going to end up costing. So we have documentation that can actually get into the details, what you're asking. Happy to share that, with the committee, but just broad strokes, the funding that we've asked for, that $60 million, is going to get us through it's going to get us through this fiscal year. It's going to get us into the next fiscal year, because there is some work that's going to be carryover, right? We're not going to get everything done in one fiscal year, but we need the monies secured we need the CIP funds secured so we can go ahead and contract for all of that work. Once the RFP is done and the bids are back in and we actually select a vendor. We do anticipate going out to bid for this project probably in fall of this year is about when we think we're going to be able to do that. And right now we're in the process of just gathering requirements. We've had numerous meetings with the different departments just to make sure that we're educating them on some of the other foundational work. I think you've heard of the Uniform Chart of Accounts, right, and going through that process and making sure that all the fiscal officers are on board with that. But yeah, there's a lot of work that needs to happen, and that $60 million is going to allow us to get across the finish line.
It would sorry, not to belabor this point, but at this point, you don't know what the total project cost might be then?
No, as I mentioned, we do have that information. Sorry, I was just about to try to get that. Sorry, just give me
Sorry to
one
put you on the spot.
second.
I'm
Oh,
just trying to
no, it's
understand,
okay.
Beyond
It's
this
okay.
initial 60 million, what else we might be on the hook
Yep.
for down the road?
It's okay. Yeah. So, we're going to have ongoing operational costs, for the system, which, we're looking at probably about, $5 million per year beyond fiscal year 26. And that's going to include, some additional funds are going to be necessary for support costs. So that's about $6 million a year ongoing costs for the financial management system.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mark, is there anything you wanted to add?
I just wanted to add that this is actually phase 4 of the initial ERP that the state started about 10 years ago. So we've done the HRMS, the human resources, modernization, payroll, and time and leave. So now we're doing the accounting systems. The state has about 50 accounting systems. Famous is, bless you, Famous is the central and most important of all those accounting systems. The others are in the departments and divisions. They each have their own accounting system. So there are a lot of things we would like to replace. The 60 million is intended to replace Famous first, and then all of the other accounting systems that we can accommodate after that. We would prefer to only have a few accounting systems when we're done. So that's what we've estimated for.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Just follow up. So there was a contract that we had prior to going out for this RFP. And this discussion has been going on for several administrations. And what assurance can you give the legislature that this is the one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I came into this position back in December, Mr. Murdoch and I and Luis Salaveria from Budget and Finance were taking a look at the project, a very hard look at the project, because some of what we identified that was going on really concerned us, right, with the project. And we identified areas where we could have done it better, right? And learning from those sort of areas where we could have done it better, we're stepping back. We've stepped back. One of the big issues was looking at requirements, right, and working with departments to make sure that we're meeting all of the requirements and making sure that we're listening to them as we go forward and building sort of that relationship, right, with all the departments. So the IV&V reports that came forward really identified areas where we were lacking. We took all of that information, all of those suggestions, and incorporated that in the way that we're doing business now as it relates to this project. So all of those shortfalls that we identified through that process are now being addressed as we go forward so that we can ensure success. Organizational change management was a big part of the project that was somewhat lacking as part of that process. We've identified that, and we have now a very strong OCM team that's been put into place. In fact, Doug has 2 individuals that are working for him that have been working side by side with me as we go forward to make sure that OCM is really top of the list. Because when you talk about business modernization, if you don't have everybody on board with that process, you're going to run into all kinds of issues going forward in terms of resistance and those types of issues that tend to derail these types of big projects. So learning from our mistakes, learning from our errors, I think has been a very eye-opening experience for us as we go forward. And we don't want to make that mistake again. We cannot afford to fail on this project. This is, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, this keeps me up at night. EFS keeps me up at night. Famous keeps me up at night, because I don't want to be in a place where we can't process checks, we can't pay vendors, we can't make payroll because we don't have a system that can process checks. And investing in this system, I think, is going to be critical. And like I said, working with Doug, who was with us, when the project, I know you said phase 4, but when we tried to, do the EFS project just most recently, we've made some very important internal changes in our overall processes.
Thank you. No, I understand that, right? If you're doing it wrong, then you need to make changes, and so I understand that. It's just it's a little frustrating because I've always believed that this is a very, very important component for this committee and other parts of state government to become better at doing our job. So this is something very important to I think to the legislature as well. The 60 million that is going to come down, is that all CIP or some cash, or how's it going to break down?
I'd have to talk to Louis a little bit about that. My understanding, it was going to be a CIP request, but
It sounds like a lot of it is operating. Coming up with a plan, doing all that kind of stuff.
I think that number is just CIP. There'll be operating expenses in follow-on years, and we already have operating costs covered. For example, the staff of people that work for ETS to manage the project is an operating expense that's already accounted for.
Okay, so the asking for it all at once, I understand there's savings in doing it that way versus phasing it in.
Right.
But have you considered a phasing plan?
One of the things that we've been talking about is, if we were to phase it, what does the contract arrangement look like, right? In that sort of, in that phased approach. If we were to go under contract for a system integrator, would that integrator be willing to, take the risk of not getting funding in a future fiscal year, right, to be able to support the contract? And that's, I think, one of the big issues and concerns that we have. And if we're able to get the $60 million in a CIP appropriation, we can ensure that there's going to be proper funding to get that project across the finish line, essentially, and not have to come back to the legislature for more funds as we go forward in the project.
Yeah. Well, you know, assurance from, in general, from every department is always something that everybody wants. Right?
Understood.
But at the same time, we have to kind of consider what's in front of us today. So, you know, further discussion on this would be important. Okay, further questions, Representative Ayu?
Thank you. I'm looking at table 3. I see that you have 808 active positions or FTEs. Is that right? And you're requesting 21 new positions for the next year. What besides the 9 positions that are going for Kona staff? What are the other positions for?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question. So a lot of those actually are within ETS, and it's a conversion from temporary to permanent positions that you see within ETS.
Okay, because my concern is that I look on I think it's table 11, you've got 200 some vacancies already open, so you can't reallocate positions or fill, or what is your plan with those 200 positions?
Yeah, so, you know, we continue to work very closely with DHERD. Obviously, there are some positions that, you know, when you look at sort of the details behind what we're actually doing for those positions, you can see that many of them we've requested 6, 7, 8 lists. We've gone through, you know, numerous recruitments. We have done numerous interviews on some of these positions. Most, if not all, have been in some way, shape, or form of a recruitment as part of that process. And in terms of these particular positions that we're asking for, you know, ETS has asked that we convert them from temporary to permanent so that we can, you know, better secure these individuals that are in these positions, because it's a longer term commitment, obviously, if it's a permanent position. And in terms of identifying positions that we could potentially give up, I think that's your question, right? Are there positions you could give up in order to make this happen? Yep. I would have to tell you that, you know, the department has worked hard to try to get those positions. When they originally asked for those positions, there was a reason that we asked for those positions. I would ask for the opportunity to go through some of these, like as an example, just going to give you a good example of the engineering and some of the changes that we're doing there. We are looking at converting some of the engineer positions that have been vacant for, you know, 7, 6, 3 years into project manager positions and trying something a little bit different to try to get those things filled. I would be hesitant to just give up those positions without first trying something different, because the work is still there. Right? Our Public Works Division is still struggling to get some of these things done, and the more resources that are taken away to be able to do things like what we're talking about in terms of trading off positions may have other negative impacts on some of the things that we're trying to do within the department.
Well, I just hear this is like the 3rd or 4th briefing where we've had a lot of discussion about doing a lot of recruitment and whatever. It just doesn't seem like, you know, that's working, or we need to come up with some other solution. I mean, you have some positions that you've been trying to fill since 2012, so just trying to figure out how you guys can meet the demand or fill your positions, you know, given the circumstances we're at now. Okay. Sorry, Chair, give me a second. Can we talk about your hybrid employees? You have a pretty extensive list of employees working hybrid. What kind of monitoring or systems do you have in place to ensure that productivity or working of employees?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. We actually have a number of employees within ETS that are on that hybrid teleworking program, as well as a number of employees that are from our Public Works Division that have been authorized. The administrators are responsible ultimately for ensuring that the work gets done, making sure that when an employee is teleworking, that if they're getting assignments, that those assignments have deadlines, and if those assignments are not completed at the level of quality or the timeliness as directed by the administrator, that action would be taken against, to address those issues or, deficiencies of those particular employees, including and up to eliminating their ability to telework. And then beyond that, possibly, there may be instances where you may have to take further action against the employee. But it's no different than if the employee were sitting at a desk, right, and having an assignment given to that employee with a deadline, right, to meet that assignment. And the administrators are working very closely with those employees that are on telework. Now, with Public Works Division, if you look at it, you'll see that it's not 100% telework, right? So, 3 days are maybe telework or 2 days are telework, and it's situational telework. So it's not, a lot of it it's not permanent telework, right? But it depends on sort of workload and where exactly the administrator wants to see that particular employee. So a lot of the weight in terms of, determining whether or not the employee is productive rests on the administrator.
Okay, but you don't have any like systems or like computer system. It's just like the individuals are doing individual monitoring. It's not like a.
Yeah. Well, they get weekly reports.
I'm
right.
saying like a computer program that monitors like clicks or something. You're not running any of those.
We don't have anything
Okay.
like that.
Okay.
No, sir.
And then my last, based off these hybrid workers, I'm looking at some of these office leases that you guys have. I mean, the list is pretty long. Is there anything that we're doing to think about consolidating some of these leases, given the amount of hybrid employees we have?
Yeah, our leasing branch within Public Works Division has been working very hard to try to find ways to reduce that. There's a statutory requirement for us to reduce our overall leasing footprint, right? So in order to try to move towards that, I think it's like a 10% reduction from a point in time. And at this point, I think we've reduced it down we're about 4% below where we were when we initially started, and so we continue to look for ways to bring operations into state facilities. A lot of that requires us to go in and make modifications to state facilities. But yeah, we're actively working on that. We actually have a leasing branch and a planning branch, a leasing office and a planning branch. That's one of their primary functions, right? Is to work on consolidation. Making sure that employees are, operating with certain, size square footage, right? There's a certain amount of space that's allocated to each employee depending on sort of their rating and the type of work that they're doing, right? And making sure that they comply with that so that we can really squeeze as many people into existing spaces as possible and get out of leases. I will share this though, okay? So when you think about like the new Department of Law Enforcement, right, that was just created, we don't have the kind of space to be able to accommodate a large department like that. So we had to go out and lease space for that particular department. Even with that, I mean, we're still able to, start to see that reduction in overall lease space. But those are the kind of things, right, that we're challenged with as a department, is trying to find that additional space wherever we can eke it out, right, within our existing facilities.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Just a quick follow-up to that. I know the Department of Law was not only public safety, but other things were enrolled into them. But what happened to the space that they were in?
They weren't in us.
Their employees were someplace.
Yeah, so as far as I know, I mean, the public safety, Department of Public Safety, I forget what they're called now, I'm sorry, it kind of escapes me, but, continue to operate as a department, right? And so in terms of the space where those individuals were in, we've got to go back and take a look at that, right, and examine it. But a lot of that space was in correctional facilities, right? And so it's not easily reprogrammable, right, for us. But in terms of law enforcement itself, they're a completely separate entity, right, from PSD.
But I'm just wondering if there was an assessment done on that space, because, right, one of the things we do, and I think you're aware of this, but we don't do a good job of managing space, right? When things go in and out, we have a lot of space that is empty. Good example is when we lose federal funds, and it was a state facility that was housing them, it just becomes an empty space that could be used for somebody else, so.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that, Chair. And I will tell you that our leasing branch, our leasing office has actually been working really hard to try to identify those particular properties to get people into them. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Chair Matayoshi, you still have a question? Okay, Chair Matayoshi, followed by Ward, followed by Kilo.
Ward's on the committee. You want to let him go?
Sorry?
Ward's on the committee. You want
Yeah, yeah. No, but everybody's, I know you were
I'm
asked.
sorry, I had to step out. I had a telework question, but I think, Rabbi, you probably asked that. I just had a general question about your vacancy rate, because you said it was quite high and you're having a difficult time filling them. Is part of that due to not being able to get applications back in a timely manner?
You know, it takes a while to get lists. Some of that is out of the control of DHERD. Obviously, if you put out a recruitment and let's say you limit it to the first 5 or 10 or 15 applicants, if you only get 3 applicants, it takes a while, right, for that list to get back to us. But timing is definitely an issue for us.
Would your department be willing to take on some of that responsibility to review applications to get them quicker?
I will tell you that our human resources operation, our personnel, team and personnel, are stretched really thin with the current amount of workload that they have. Now, does that mean that if I had to repurpose other positions, like within the comptroller's office as an example, to help, would I do that? I might even be willing to, work on some of that if it's going to mean being able to fill some of those positions, right? I'm all about doing what I have to do to get things done, right? And so, to answer your question, and I'm sorry, we would be willing to take on, some of that work as long as we can handle it internally.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much, Representative Ward.
I have 2 questions, one about respect and the other one about security. And as I was listening and seeing earlier on TV, I noticed the extreme variety of aloha shirts. You guys just really light up over the TV. None of them the same, all colorful, very tasteful. Having said that, the issue that a year ago that you sat here encouraged me so much about Iolani Palace, what otherwise was a desecration of parking meters on the only palace in the nation, and there's no palace in the world that has parking meters, which I understand you said, well, we're going to take away the parking meters, but we're going to have a macro pay on your own meters. Is there anything more that you can do to get respect back, other than making people park there, either tourists
I appreciate that, Representative. And as you know, as I've said, previously, preserving and protecting that extremely important and sensitive cultural asset that belongs here, that must be protected, is important for me. Right? We've talked about that. So we've been working closely with DLNR because DLNR ultimately controls that property. To try to find a way to address, one, the parking, right? And then secondly, how do we restore it to what it should be? So we have been working very closely with Mr. Cottrell from DLNR on what the future path would look like,
What
right,
seems to
for
be
us.
the barriers, though? What
Yeah.
do they say? We don't have parking for our employees, or some.
That's part of it, right? Because a lot of employees, including employees that work for the legislature, rely on those spaces over there, right, at the palace. And so one of the things that I have really been pushing for, and Michael Arakaki, our automotive management division administrator, can attest to, is trying to find alternative off-site parking options for state employees. We've identified a number of properties that would lend themselves extremely well to state employee parking. They're not walking distance to here, but with a simple shuttle service at the right frequency, I think it would address a lot of the concerns and allow us to change the palace parking that we have that's in
I
existence
didn't
now.
even mention the blacktop, of which
Yeah.
is too much.
Yeah.
evasively all over the place.
And so, to your point, Representative, Mr. Cottrell and I have been talking about what does the resurfacing look like, right? And asphalt, is not something that I think we would like to see there at the Palace. I think we need to see something that's a lot more accurate in terms of what was originally, there.
Thank you for that. I mean, again, encouraged, and I know you personally had said that you are very respectful before you even walk onto the palace grounds. So I know this is not a personal issue, it's a matter of departments, bureaucracy, and the will to do and to extend something. Second question is regarding security. I just came through the security downstairs, and I commend the money that has gone into it, but do we only have a half a loaf, or are we going to get another loaf? Because as concealed to carry comes, and the people are carrying bags, there's no conveyor to get bags inspected. Is that going to be coming as a counterpart to what otherwise is now the bare minimum archway called a metal detector?
Yeah, short answer is yes. The intent is to add a bag screening or, package screening that you typically would see, like I think the judiciary has something like that, as well as when you go to the airport, right? You have to run your bags right through a scanner. Ultimately, that is our end goal, if you will. Unfortunately, it just takes time, and we weren't able to get the equipment in place in time for the session. And so what we're doing right now is sort of a phased-in approach. The guards that are there are doing I think they're doing a really good job trying to get people through without, being too invasive. But to your point, I mean, one of the goals that we're trying to do is really to secure this Capitol, and that's.
But sir, 10 years ago, a retired FBI agent and a retired NSA agent in my district said, Ward, do you know how vulnerable you guys are to even just driving by the Father Damien with a pickup truck filled with fertilizer and expenses, jumping up over the steps, going in and at the State of the Union, blowing up every leader in the state of Hawaii, or going into the Senate. One of the suggestions that was made, which is without expense or without major decision, is to take those huge planters, the big round cement ones, and stick them next to Father Damien so no truck can drive up and through there. That has gone on deaf ears. So when you say, well, it takes time, this was 10 years ago I brought this to the speaker. And that I was gonna have a, quote, Capitol Security Task Force made up of these NSA and FBI guys. But they said, no, we're gonna take care of it. Now here we are in 2024, we at least got some metals detectors.
Right.
And I'm not paranoid in that we're gonna get blown up, but the fact is we have to be prepared for what, the world is going crazy, the mainland is going crazy, we just have to be a little bit more circumspect, a little bit more safety conscious, and this stuff is not expensive. The planners is a no-brainer. I think the most expensive metal detector is like $12,000. So it's a matter of political will is my counter, basically.
Understood, and thank you. And I would just add that if you look at the statutory mission of the Department of Accounting and General Services, security and law enforcement is not in our statutory mission.
But you fund it, though.
But we saw it as a very important action to take to be able to secure this facility. So when you see the guards that are out there, whether it's downstairs in the rotunda or in the chamber level, or actually doing roving patrols at all of our facilities in the district, we felt that it was important to move forward. Now, I will say that we have been working closely with the Department of Law Enforcement to take over, right, because it is their statutory mission. However, they didn't actually officially start until January 1st, right? And so working very closely with Director Lowe, he's really keen on making sure that these security measures continue to move forward and address some of those concerns that you've raised. So I will just share that the Department of Law Enforcement is aware, DAG's is aware, we're going to support, our sister department as they go forward in ultimately addressing those concerns.
And I would hope when we meet again in 2025 in January that there's going to be hopefully a progress report that says we've made some
Thank you, Representative, and hopefully that will come from Director Lowe. So,
respect and security. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Representative Keela, followed by Lamosal, followed by Purport.
Sorry, Comptroller, I want to go back to the budget highlight number 2 with the 200 million increase on the revolving fund for the risk management office regarding anticipated insurance claim payouts. Has any of that money we haven't paid out anything. Is it the ability of DAGs, I think, to potentially put this into a separate viewing for any potential litigation to come, that it's easily accessible? Because I understand when there is some payouts, there's some privacy, but I think the legislature has to know what if gets paid out and for what reason to, one, make sure everything is done correctly and properly, but two, if there is liability or fault in the state, how do we not incur future liability or risk?
right. No, I think that's a really good point. And so there is the risk management revolving fund, which is where we're asking for this ceiling to be increased, which would then, be able to accept whatever, funds are received from the insurance, whatever claims are paid out essentially from the insurance carriers. And I just want to be clear that the monies that we're talking about are specifically claims against the state's policies that we have that protect our property, right? And so when you think about what happened in West Maui, there was a school, elementary school, King Kamehameha 3 elementary school that was destroyed. There was the library, which is located right there in Lahaina town. And there were a couple other facilities. I think there was a affordable rental unit, right, that was destroyed, that was built with federal monies. So, and probably a number of other facilities, right? So whatever, we receive in terms of, claims, right, will be put into this, fund to be able to be utilized to rebuild those specific facilities, right? So that's really what we're asking for in terms of this ceiling, is to be able to receive those monies in and then be able to work with the departments to use those funds to basically rebuild those damaged, destroyed facilities.
And so I think I would ask that when we do the budget, and are there ways you can build tables with that money to start tracking what is expended for anything regarding Maui, whether it's payouts, rebuilding, or whatnot?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And we would, and let me just back up a little bit. I mean, in terms of how those monies are going to be utilized, it's going to be incumbent upon us to share that information with all of you. I mean, because you need to know what's happening, right? You need to understand sort of what the process is. And this is something that our department will be working closely with the Department of Budget and Finance on, as well as, all the impacted departments. So, yeah, I do anticipate that we will keep you apprised of, sort of how we're moving forward, in this process.
And was that infusion of, or the request, was that in consulting too with the Attorney General?
Yeah, so this ceiling increase came forward to us through Budget and Finance. So they saw our initial request of that $49 million, which was to cover premiums, and then based on some of the discussions that have been taking place, determined that perhaps a ceiling increase would be more appropriate to allow us to be able to accept the claims and carry out our mission.
But there was a legal overview.
I would have to say that I don't know what BNF did before they put this in there, so I can't speak to the director or how the director may have moved forward.
Okay. Thank you, Comptroller. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Representative Lamosal.
I had a question about the 13 positions that you folks want to convert to permanent. So this is the $900,000. Is that correct? Is that the amount of the cost of the positions in total?
Yeah, I'm going to actually ask the Chief Information Officer to come forward, because I think those particular positions are ETS,
Yes.
AGS 131. So he can go ahead and provide you a little more insight on the question that you've asked, Representative. Thank you.
I just wanted to know because I'm looking at the table in our budget in brief, and it says for Act 164, what 900,000 was appropriated for that. So I just wanted to make sure that that was the amount. Yeah.
Yes.
And then I just want to know, I guess, what are these 13 positions, their roles in the modernization for this state?
So those folks are the program management office for the enterprise financial system, and they are working on, right now, risk reduction for the next implementation. So they were working on the prior project that we eventually canceled. The vendor told us that they couldn't meet cost, schedule, or performance, and that was one of our quality assurance triggers that we have that we look at whenever we're doing a project. So that and some other things like the IV&V report told us we should stop that project, do more risk reduction so that when the next vendor comes in, you know, we will be more ready and we can ask less of that vendor once they come in. So one of the things we have to do, for example, is be prepared to take the data out of Famous and put it into the new system. It's called extract, transform, and load. So those people are working on that, for example. That would also be valuable if Famous were to have a problem, that we could move the data out of Famous and put it into a new target system just so the state can continue to operate. So they're doing risk reduction, risk management right now for the next system.
I have a follow-up question, Chair. So those 13 positions, I know you have a vast amount of vacancies in AGS 131. Could they not just be, could they not just apply for those positions, or are these just specialized positions that might, sorry, that might be two questions, but could they just replace maybe some of those positions, and we just, instead of calling them whatever they're classified right now, and just make that the position itself? And
They're very unique positions that don't normally exist in the rest of ETS. For example, one is organizational change management, or two. We have database analysts and other jobs that we don't have the same position in ETS. They were established to work particularly on a program implementation, which is a different skill set than operating, which is what the rest of ETS does. But we do, for example, have some trade-off transfers this time. I think we're trading 9 for 6.
I did see that.
Yeah, so we are trying to take people that are working on legacy technology now, and when that position becomes vacant, we move it into more modern technology. So they might go into something like data management, artificial intelligence, other things like that that are current topics, and get away from things like computer operator or mainframe operator. You know, we try and move away from the legacy technology. So we are managing down the workforce, managing it to a different skill set.
So then you guys would then essentially, for the 13 positions, for it to be permanent, we'll be asking 900,000 in A funds, essentially.
Well, that money already exists in the budget.
Right.
So we're just,
with federal funds though.
right, that's true.
But then it'll be gone this year.
Yep, that's right.
So like after that, then it will, because you're requesting it to be permanent into general funds.
Right,
So it'll be 900 in A funds.
yes. They will all be exempt positions, which is normal for ETS. Our statute says that our positions are supposed to be exempt, although we still have some legacy civil service positions. So if the state no longer has a need for these positions, we will be able to eliminate them. But I expect the financial management project's going to go at least 5 years.
Thank you.
Lieutenant Poi Poi.
Thank you, Chair. I have several questions. Since the palace was brought up in the parking, as a Native Hawaiian, you know, we do use the grounds for multiple purposes, and it's important to maintain the access to the property for different events and demonstrations. We have the Onipa'a Peace March coming up on the 17th. So I guess my question is, in that planning process that you're going to go through, and I brought this up to DLNR before, will you be consulting and conducting consultations with the Native Hawaiian community?
Yeah, thank you, Representative. We would be in support of DLNR, and so I would encourage them to do that. I really believe that's going to be important that that consultation occurs. I'll talk to DLNR about my position on that, and I will share with them that that consultation, I strongly recommend that that consultation occur.
Okay, thank you. And I brought
Yeah.
it up to them as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Representative.
So relating to repairs and maintenance for schools in Hana, Lanai, Molokai, very remote areas, all in my district, we have similar issues, as was mentioned for Hawaii Island, with getting the workers out to the location to do the work, and a lot of the time being eaten up by travel time.
Yep.
Lanai, it's a plane ride or a ferry ride. So I'm curious if you've considered creating even part-time positions, because the work ends up being part-time anyway, or I mean full-time would be great, but in those areas that are based there, or potentially contracting the work out, because for Lanai in particular as well, it's hard to get the work that needs to be done in a timely way.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question. As a longtime Maui resident, now living on Oahu, I recognize some of the challenges, right, that are faced when we are trying to service remote areas like Hana, or even going to some of the neighbor islands like Lanai and Molokai, right? It is a challenge. I'm open to exploring ways that we can do business better to serve our clients better. I will say that there is a service level agreement that's in place between DAGS and the Department of Education that spells out exactly what some of the responsibilities are for DAGS, where those, it helps to guide us essentially in terms of what our responsibilities are. I know that the Maui team, through Jeff and his team, work really hard to, whatever work orders come in, to get them addressed as quickly as they possibly can. Now, can we do it better? I'm sure there's ways we can do it better. Does it mean adding additional positions to some of our more remote communities? I'm open to exploring that. Right now, my focus has really been on Hawaii Island because I've identified Hawaii Island as an area that just geographically has been a challenge for DAGS. To be able to address those 83 facilities that I talked about has been, I'm surprised they've been able to do it as long as they have been, frankly. I want to get that done and get that fixed. I want to address that particular area first. Once I'm done there, then my focus will be on the other neighbor island operations. I think Kauai is actually pretty good, but I do agree with you that Maui could use some help. But I do know how hard Jeff and his team work to try to get through as many work orders as possible. So I'm happy to work with your office on what something down the road might look like to be able to help support
Would you be
Maui.
able to provide the memorandum or the agreement with DOE?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's a public document. I think I've shared it with this body, but I'll make sure I get it to your
Thank
office.
you. And very happy for Hawaii Island.
One step at a time.
Yeah.
So I apologize.
I think this is my last. In regard to the telecom radio site leases, I was just wanted to ask if that could be provided in a list of like where the locations of those are.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, we can give that to you.
And then my last question regarding the planters.
Yep.
What was the total cost or the estimated cost of the planters specifically?
I'll get that information for you. But that was a very important project for us because those planters were actually leaking right into the...
I know that.
Yeah.
And so the kukui trees.
Yes.
They died the last time.
Yep.
So I'm very concerned that they're going to die again. And culturally, a very important tree. It's our indigenous tree.
Yep.
I watched the last ones slowly die over the course of years until it was like the land before time and the last leaf fell off.
I know.
It's true.
Yeah.
Because I paid a lot of attention
Yeah.
to those trees. So I'm just curious, like, how are we going to not let them die again? Or are we going to have like an arborist come in and make sure they're healthy? And if they're not healthy, we can replant them outside while they still have time.
Yeah. No, the big issue that with those planters prior to this project was irrigation and drainage, right? And if you are not able to have proper drainage, you're going to have all kinds of other issues with whatever you plant in there, right? And so this project addressed not only the waterproofing, right, of the planters, but also the drainage and the irrigation, so that we can ensure that whatever's planted in there is properly irrigated.
Okay,
'Cause-
so it wasn't to do with wind or what, sunlight
No.
or, you know, rooting?
We had all
becoming
kinds of other
root-bound, or-
issues with that, with those planters.
Okay,
That,
so do we have the ability to like have an arborist
yeah.
looking at them every once in a while?
Our central services division has the ability to access an arborist. We've used, and as well as our automotive management division has used arborists in the past, because we've got trees all over the place, right? They're in our parking lots, they're on our properties that we're responsible for. So we've engaged the services of arborists in the past. We don't have one on staff.
Yeah.
Like DLNR has one on staff. You know, and we've actually worked with a DLNR arborist in the past from time, but they're not always available, right? So we have to go out and, you know, get a third party. So long story short, yes, we will make sure that an arborist takes a look periodically at those trees. Keeping those trees alive is very important.
Alive and healthy.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Representative.
Okay, thank you, Representative Takanouchi, followed by Garrett.
Hi, Comptroller.
Hi.
Thanks, Chair. I wanted to circle back a little bit to the conversation regarding, I guess, vacancies as well as the telework numbers. Is there any sense already, understanding that, you know, with ETS especially, your department has probably more eligible workers who could be doing telework. Is there any sense if that's helping us fill some of these positions or retain people where, you know, in the past we've seen after 2, 3, 4 years, they would have already left. But also understanding
Bless
that
you.
these jobs also in the private sector probably pay a great deal more than what the state might be able to offer. Is there any sense already with what we're seeing in the department?
I'll let the CIO talk about from the ETS side, but let me just say that from our Public Works division, where you saw a number of positions, right, that have qualified, bless you, by the way, for teleworking, that's actually been a very effective way of keeping employees, keeping the morale up, as well as keeping them on staff, right? Because other businesses are doing it, right? They're not, I think we've moved away from 100% telework, right, to something sort of in between, which is where we are with this sort of hybrid environment. And people like that flexibility. They want that flexibility. And yes, we cannot pay, you know, maybe as much as the private sector in terms of that. But having that tool, right, as a benefit, I think has certainly helped on our Public Works division side. Now, I'm not 100% sure about ETS, but I would bet that it's probably very similar, right, in terms of that benefit.
Yes, it's very critical in IT right now because most people can work from home 100% in the IT world. A lot of companies shut down their offices and moved that way. So we've actually had people come to us who said, I will come if I can telework. It's been that important to them. And I'm sure that if I made everybody work in the office 100% of the time, I would probably lose. My vacancy rates would be a lot higher because I would lose some really brilliant people who just want the flexibility, and they're willing to work for a little less to have that flexibility. So I'm happy to retain anybody, you know, that's a really talented IT worker. But I don't have actual numbers, and I haven't pushed the button to test it because I'd hate to lose the people I have. Across the state, we're very lucky with the IT workforce that we have keeping everything running, because it's not easy keeping some of this stuff running that's older.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my hope is that if we're not maybe just to start tracking so that we can compare this to kind of see where our turnover rates used to be at compared to where they are when we implement these systems. I know there's a lot of questions around telework and the productivity and all those things, and I think that kind of information compared to past years that the department's seeing would be really helpful for us.
And we do require our people to come in 2 days a week and as a branch so that they all see each other and talk to each other and have some camaraderie, you know, which is important. And then they also go over their projects that they're working on. So it's a healthy kind of telework, you know, that I think is really good. But it's interesting to try and track, you know.
Yeah, and I think even doing something as simple as a survey, right? Asking existing employees that have qualified or are utilizing the telework program, you know, what their thoughts are on it, and whether or not, if the program were to go away, would they also look for other opportunities, right? I think surveying employees from time to time is really important, is an important part of that process.
And one of our goals as ETS is to make sure that people can telework. So having access to your pay statement at home, having access to your everything at home if you need to. But, out of the pandemic, we were already pretty well prepared with Microsoft 365 and the online payroll system and things like that. And we're going to keep all that up and running and keep it available both for telework and for anything else that might happen that we need it for.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Just a real quick follow-up, and I know this is probably a dear question, but I just wondered if you guys looked into it. So when people are teleworking, have you guys looked into the workers' comp issue because it's a facility that is not yours?
I'm not sure about looking into the actual workers' comp issue. I can get more information on that, but one of the things that I think is really important just to mention, right, to this committee chair is that the amount of work that it takes to qualify, right, to be able to telework.
I understand the value. I just wondering if that issue was even thought about.
Yeah, so they're required to certify that their space is a safe space, right?
Is there some kind of thing they sign off on?
Yep, there is.
Okay.
There is actually.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you. Okay, Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me, Comptroller. Going back to a couple of issues we've already covered, so just a follow-up. Regarding building security, I believe the plan is to eventually eliminate public parking from the state capitol. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And what is the plan to continue access for the public when they come here?
That's a great question. All your questions, everyone's questions are great. But, the first thing we need to do, and what's really kind of holding up the process, is identifying alternative locations for parking. As you know, you drive around this district and you will see very quickly that there are not a lot of options for parking. The biggest issue that we have closing down parking within the state capitol, under the state capitol building, is finding alternative public parking options, right? And if we're also talking about changing and eliminating public parking at the Palace, where else, what other options do we have, right? I will share that we've even gone as far as looking at what would it take for Hotel Street to be not fully restored, obviously we wouldn't do that, but to bring in some sort of parking options where the old Hotel Street, the mall, if you're familiar with that mall, that was Hotel Street. It went all the way through at one time. The street lights are still there. The sidewalks are still there. Does it make sense to, use some of that space for public parking? Those are things we're going to have to explore. We have been talking about that internally, but it costs money. The big thing that I've been focusing on as comptroller is our employee parking. And what do we do with, sort of this challenge of employees who want to come and work for the state. They're not making big salaries, but they have to park somewhere. They don't have, maybe they have a challenge with, they can't, use public transportation for whatever reason. But we need to solve those problems first, right? Before we just shut down the parking at the Capitol. We can't do that unless we have all of these pieces in place. So again, from a department standpoint, we need to get that off-site parking solution in order for us to be able to move forward.
Okay, so it's not going to happen anytime soon, in other words?
I can't. I can't shut it down unless law enforcement comes in and says, hey, you need to shut it down today. And then everybody is scrambling to figure out where's the public going to park. First and foremost, where's the public going to park? And then secondly, where are the employees? How does that all kind of shake out?
Right. Do you anticipate using those public parking stalls eventually for employee parking?
Yeah, definitely. So the parking that is in the state capitol parking facility will be utilized to support the needs of the tenants, which includes the legislature, both House and Senate, also includes Lieutenant Governor's office as well as the Governor's office as well.
Okay, thank you. And just one follow-up question, Chair, regarding the FAMOUS system. We've spoken in the past about the payroll lag system that we have in the state.
Yep.
I understand this was done historically 25, 30 years ago, is basically an accounting gimmick to balance the state budget. All these years later, we've still never fixed that system. We've had a bill in the Labor and Government Operations Committee last year that talked about looking at it. I know you've mentioned that one of the challenges with that eliminating the payroll lag is the issue of overpayments.
Right.
And I think the latest number you told me was that BNF said it would cost roughly 270 million to bring everyone up.
That's what we've been told.
Okay, can you just explain like other challenges with payroll lag? Because I think a lot of employees, when we talk about the challenges with bringing people onto state employment, but they don't realize they're going to be missing an entire paycheck until they sign their thick stack of papers on their first day of work.
Right. Yeah, so from the DAG standpoint, the issue with eliminating the payroll lag is, just making sure that from a timing perspective, the information that is being recorded on that particular individual's work, right, is done in a timely manner, right? We have a certain amount of time that any changes need to be made before the payroll processes, right? And if we miss that window, then it causes all kind of other cascading issues, including possibly overpayment. And how do we go back and get those monies from employees that have been overpaid, right? So it just opens up, some resource challenges for us. Can we address those resource challenges? Definitely, if we've got the staff, right, to be able to support some of that. But really, it boils down to a timing thing. Can people get their payroll information in on time? Because if they don't, then it opens up the door for all these other issues that we're going to have to address. Can the department operate? It did prior to the lag being implemented. So I think clearly we could do it. It's just making sure that we've got the necessary resources in place to be able to support our very small payroll team, right, that has that responsibility.
Right. Would having this new FAMA system help in that transition?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not going to hurt. But ultimately, we're still going to have to look at some point in time, the payroll system for the state, right? Because even that is aging. So, hopefully as we go forward in this modernization process and these efforts, things like that, like the lag, can be addressed through some of these modern technologies, right? That we just don't have access to right now, given the current system and the constraints.
Okay, thank you, Comptroller. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Representative Ward.
Why I love the Finance Committee is I always find out something new. No parking for the public in this building. What's the logic behind that? And have we been consulted, or who made the decision?
Oh, no, there's still public parking in this building.
But what's the note of what you said, the elimination of public parking, or are you just going to cut down on it?
No. So let me just clarify. So if we do close the parking lot that is beneath this building and limit it only to state employees, right, then we need to find alternative parking for the public so that we can ensure the public has proper access to this facility, right? So there's a lot of things that need to be.
But what's the logic of that? Taking the public out. I mean, you've heard speeches on the floor. Welcome to
Representative Ward,
the
I think
people's
that
house.
the logic is to your earlier question. It's a security issue because.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Is it a security issue?
Well, I think that is what is sort of leading us down this path, right? Is that law enforcement has identified it as a security issue, which is, I think you even mentioned it earlier. And so how do you address that? And one way to do that is by limiting access to who can park vehicles beneath this building.
Okay, that is very clear. The second one is a follow-up on the teleworkers. How many people are teleworkers? What percentage of your workforce are teleworkers?
It's overall is a small percentage of our workforce. I don't have the exact percentage, but
5%, 10%, 15%?
Yeah, it's probably like 5, in that range of 5 to 10%, no more than 10%.
Okay, thank you.
And of that, many of them, like as the Chief Information Officer was mentioning, is a lot of them are on this hybrid, right, teleworking, where they're in the office for 2 days and teleworking.
Would your department be more or less or the same as other departments? Which one has the most teleworkers?
Boy, I don't know.
Not sure. Okay.
I'm really not sure. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, Representative.
Just a few questions. On the Procurement Policy Board, what is the Procurement Policy Board's role with respect to other departments that do their own procurement?
Are you speaking to, which departments are you speaking about?
Let's say Department of Transportation.
Okay.
Like what kind of interfacing do you guys do?
So they're required to follow the procurement laws as, in our statute. In terms of the Procurement Policy Board itself, I mean, we look at And I'm one member, right? I don't lead the procurement policy board. I'm not the chair of the board. But I can tell you that we look at things like administrative rules. How do we promulgate administrative rules that, essentially take, it's the action, I guess, part of the statute, right? And so that's one of the things and areas where we've been focused on as a board.
Okay.
Administrative
So a
rules.
few years ago, the legislature amended 103D-701 to put a timeline on resolving protests. It's my understanding that some departments may or may not be complying with that. Is there any role for the policy board to advise or enforce that kind of response by departments?
I will. I'll just want to, if I can, Representative. I'm sorry. I just want to make it clear too that State Procurement Office is an attached agency to DAG, so we have no managerial oversight, right, over the State Procurement Office. And in terms of that particular board, the Procurement Policy Board, again, the comptroller is a member, one of 5, and not the chair, of it. And so whatever matters are taken up by the board would have to be sort of at the behest of the chair. And so could it be something that we take up and look at? I don't see why not. I don't think we're precluded from doing that. But it would have to be something introduced, by the chair for consideration.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, I want to follow up on something on the insurance issue, right? There was an appropriation of 17 million last year, and then now you're asking for 49, which was originally a fund, and then the governor increased it to 200 and made it revolving fund. Is that to pay the premium?
I'm sorry, say that again,
Is
Chair.
that to pay the premium?
That's a great question. We asked for the $49 million for premium, to cover premiums. I would have to defer to the Budget and Finance Director to provide a little more insight, but what I do understand is that the $200 million, this is my understanding now, okay, so Louis might have a completely...
Well, I understand, if monies come in, you need the ability to
Correct.
spend. And
Correct.
So I understand that part, but...
Correct.
So, but you're going to use money you take in the revolving fund to pay for the premium?
We would have to look at what funds are in the revolving fund to be able to address our premium needs.
Okay. And then
Because that's the only place where we get funds to support
that's where you'd
premiums.
stick it, but yeah, I understand. But then usually it's A-funded, right, when we pay for premiums.
Yes, that's
but the
correct.
second part, is that the magnitude of what we can see going forward as far as in the current risk arena that the state is in? It has jumped from 17 to 49.
Yeah, so like as an example, we just did our renewals. I'll give you just a really good idea of kind of where we are. I think in this year, our total premium renewal cost was just shy of 35 million, which was a significant, I think it was like maybe 10 or 15% or more increase over prior year premiums. So, and what we've been told by our third-party insurance consultant is that we should anticipate an additional 10 to 15% increase in premiums every year as we go forward, not just because of the events that happen on Maui, but just generally some of the losses, right, that are occurring in other states, right, that impact us. So this is something that is going to continue to increase over time. And so that's why when I mentioned a little bit earlier, we really want to have that conversation about what kind of risk appetite does the state have, right? Because if we can change the deductible to a higher limit, let's say it's 50 million, right? Or maybe it's 100 million. I don't know what that is, right? But if the state's willing to accept a $50 million loss, right? What kind of benefit do we get on the premium side? What kind of reduction? And just to give you kind of and again, please don't hold me to these numbers, but at about 100, if we did something like $150 million premium, in other words, we had losses up to 150 million and we covered them, to get sort of to get additional insurance, right? We could get a policy for about maybe 10 or 11 million dollars that would give us between that 200 and, 200 point whatever million to $450 million in coverage. So in other words, if we had a catastrophic event, we would be covered beyond that $150 million deductible. I think I said 200, but beyond that $150 million deductible. So these are the kind of things that we need to talk about, right? That we need some guidance because, to your point earlier, Representative Kobayashi, our risk management office, they're looking at these things because they recognize to get the monies to fund the premiums is becoming harder and harder every year.
Is
Right.
Mr. Kitoka in the audience?
Yeah, Tracy's here with us. Somewhere. Come on up,
Yeah.
Tracy. Yeah. So Tracy Kitaoka is our risk management officer. He's within DAGS, and he has been very involved in a lot of what I'm talking about right now, including the analysis that was performed by a third party. Tracy?
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so part of the question is that 200 million ceiling increase. It was 200 million because that is the limit of the property insurance policy, right? So
Per incident, by the way.
So from the Maui wildfires, we're anticipating we have a policy that covers that particular event up to 200 million. So that's why the ceiling, if that insurance proceeds comes in, we would like to have the ceiling flexibility to be able to expend it, whether it's reimbursing other departments or whatever BNF has plans for that funds. So in addition to that, when we looked at what benefit we get from these insurance policies that we're buying, because the premiums are going higher and higher each year, we're looking at different options. The deductible right now is $1 million for a fire. If we go up to $150 million, right? The question is, can the state afford that $150 million hit?
There was a study by Resolution that was supposed to be done.
Yeah, so that study has brought up that issue. At the end of the day, the question is, what can we afford? The more risk we take, the less the premium, right? So we can save on the premiums, but take on more risk. So what optimal level is that going to be for the state? So one question that we need to take care of is, what can the state afford? And that'll help us make decisions on whether we buy a policy with a large deductible or keep it small and we pay a little bit higher premiums.
Okay. So has this increase in premium, is it because now Hawaii, prior to this, I would assume that we were not one of the states that were, that the insurers looked at and said there was a high wildfire state.
Correct.
And now we are. Is that what?
Well, the wildfire didn't help.
Yeah. But do they consider us a wildfire state now?
It's going to be on, because we're going to be filing a claim possibly up to 200 million, right? So we are going to be put on the map for that. Before, it wasn't so much a large issue.
Right.
But now, right, with this large claim coming in, insurers that have been insuring us all these years will take notice to that.
So this will affect everyone, not only the state, but private sector also.
Yeah, well, commercial and the personal insurance will kind of go hand in hand with each other, because you have these private owners that have their own homeowners insurance, right? So those insurance companies are going to have to pay those claims, so they'll be on the map also.
Okay. Yeah, this is something we have to look
Yeah.
into. Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Any further questions? Okay, we want to thank you for coming in, and
Thank you,
we'll,
Chair.
we'll appreciate working with you in the future. So,
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Okay, we're going to take a short recess, members, to bring in the Department of Labor. Recess. Okay, we're going to reconvene the Committee on Finance to continue our informational briefing. Next is Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. Director, please.
Good afternoon, Happy New Year, and thank you for this opportunity to provide updates on the department's budget and operations. Chair Yamashita and honorable members of the House and Finance Committee. I'm Jade Butai, Director of the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. Bill Kunzman, my Deputy Director, was looking forward to the info brief, but he recently, I'll do some introduction. All of the administrators and managers who I'm going to introduce deserve my gratitude and appreciation for their hard work and valuable contributions on developing this budget. Without their efforts, this budget obviously would not have been possible. The personal relationships and cooperative spirit that form the backbone of the department, the aloha for each other, is tremendous and inspiring. The foundational and shared value of aloha and the love we have for our state is tremendous. I'll introduce by, start with Lynn Araki Reagan. She's our new ASO. Please stand up when I call your name. She was kind enough to join our department. Francis Kagawa, he's our, he knows the budget backwards and forwards. Kim Nguyen, he's our HR Human Resources Officer. Larson Takanishi is our HR specialist. Bennett Yap is our IT manager. And then our Workforce Development Division, Maricar Pilutin Pretes, she's our administrator. Jay Ishibashi, job training specialist. And for our Workforce Development Council, we have our executive director. You know her, she's very familiar to you folks, Bennett Misalucha. And with our HIASH, Occupational Safety and Health Division, Norman Ahu, Administrator. Julius Takanai, he's the Manager and Chief Boiler Inspector. And then our Wage Standards Division, we have Cheryl Lee, Administrator. Mary Imamura, Technical Support Services Supervisor. Peter Lee, Technical Support Staff Specialist. And then our Unemployment Insurance Division, and Pereira Eustaquio, Administrator and my predecessor. Arthur Barba, he's a Program Development Officer. For our Disability Compensation Division, we have Joanne Bidenhar, Administrator. Royden Koito, Program Support Chief. And then with our Hawaii Civil Rights Commission, Marcus Kawatachi, Executive Director. Heather McVeigh, Deputy Executive Director. And then Hawaii Labor Relations Board, Marcus Oshiro, he's the chair. And then our Labor and Industrial Relations Appeals Board, Damien Elefante, chair. And our Office of Community Services, Quirino Espejo, senior accountant. The DLR's budget requests contained in the Governor's Supplemental Executive Budget are modest, essentially housekeeping requests. Simply put, it continues on exactly in the trajectory that we laid out for the biennium budget. We don't have any additional requests. Our modest requests reflect the circumstances on Maui and the budget and finance instructions, and in light of the important decisions you will have to make regarding resource allocation to address Hawaii's current challenges, especially as a result of the Maui wildfires. The DLIR, like many employers, has focused on the challenges of recruitment and retention and responding to the Maui wildfires, in addition to our regular operations. The department has two major modernization efforts underway. The Disability Compensation Division is phasing in its new ECMS system. The public portal went live in 2023 and currently using ARPA funds for operations. We anticipate $3.6 million annual cost beginning in the next biennium. The Unemployment Insurance Division has awarded $45 million on November 14 for its modernization project. It has begun writing the contract and procuring external legal services to help with the contract. UI anticipates the contract starting soon and projecting an implementation of the new system in the latter part of 2026. Recently, the DLIR has focused on ensuring the delivery of its services to the communities impacted by the Maui wildfires. The department staffed the various disaster centers and is providing temporary support in the form of unemployment insurance benefits and assistance, like the disaster unemployment assistance, as well as for those seeking job referral and search assistance through a national dislocated worker grant in partnership with the Maui Economic Opportunity, or MEO. In addition, the Hawaii Occupational Safety and Health Division, or HIOSH, in partnership with the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, deployed staffing and provided personal protective equipment and safety seminars for private and to facilitate these efforts, the DLIR has conducted outreach with existing community partners and developed a new relationship with a wide variety of organizations in the community, civic, religious, ethnic, labor, etc. And relatedly, the DLIR's Office of Community Services has provided funding for the Maui Immigrant Resource Center to bolster language assistance in various languages, Chuukese, Marshallese, Ilocano, Tagalog, Spanish, and Tongan. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today and provide testimony.
Thank you very much. Okay, members, we'll move on to questions. Any questions?
I have one, Chair.
Chairman Kao.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks. Good to see you again, Director. My question is about your OSHA. Is it still not only on Oahu? You don't have Neighbor Island offices established yet?
We have one in Kona.
Only in Kona.
Kona,
So
yes.
you still respond according to complaints?
Yes.
Or do you go out periodically and do inspections?
I think it's complaint driven.
Only complaints.
Complaint.
Have we had any incidences where things have happened at workplaces because we haven't been on top of the safety issues?
Let me defer to my administrator, Norman.
Good afternoon. We have one in Kona, as the director has said, and the rest of them we do run on because we have reporting requirements. So whenever something happens, like serious, like fatalities, it's 8-hour reporting requirements. So we fly out as soon as we can. Other than that, we fly out this within 24 hours or so forth, because we have OSHA monitors us for response time also. So things like that we go. But we also have programs, inspections. We have it by the neighbor islands where we pull randomly according to the OSHA 300 reports, where we see a lot of things happening in a business, and then we go there and unannounced and we inspect.
Okay, so there's still that surprise attack
Oh yes,
possibility.
yes, that is our rule. We cannot.
That's
let
good.
them
That's good to
know.
hear. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Ayu.
I actually have a few OSHA questions too. So I recently called regarding an OSHA question, and I was directed to the federal OSHA division. What is the relationship between your department or the OSHA department here and federal OSHA standards?
So generally, I guess you could say that federal OSHA has jurisdiction over the whole nation. And every state that wants to have its own program, I think there are 22 states, you can petition and write your plan. And then there's various jurisdictional delegations that they provide to you. In Hawaii, Hawaii OSHA has jurisdiction over county governments, state governments, and all private employers. The federal OSHA continues to have jurisdiction over military, federal lands, anything over the water, maritime.
So as far as any like workplace safety violations, that person would call your office and you would come out and inspect?
If it's not on federal lands or not in maritime and so forth, yes, they would call us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I have some questions for the director now. Director, on table 11 is your vacancy report. It says UI will hire when funding becomes available. What is that? What does that mean exactly?
Well, we have a lot of positions that are, they're established, but we keep them on the books because it takes a long time to create positions. I mean, it could take 2 or 3 years. So when we get funding, then, and we can build the positions, but unless you have the funding, you can't really fill the position. So when we have grants that we get, then we can fill those positions.
Okay, so these positions are funded by monies, not
federal funds.
Federal monies. Okay, I understand. Okay. I think that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Representative Ward.
Director, teleworkers, how many do you have and what percentage of your workforce?
We have about 15 who are teleworking, and that's about 2.7% of our.
Say 15 or 50?
15, 1.5.
1.5. Small amounts then, really. Do you have any southern border migrants in?
I mean, I know OCS that provides the services for every, we have a contract with DHS.
Because Texas has not sent us anybody, et cetera.
Okay.
We anticipate that they will, or maybe, are way inexpensive.
No,
You can come to the table if you want to answer the question.
Okay. We can get back with you, Representative, but I don't think we.
Like last month, there was 300,000 in one crowd. So inevitably, they said, well, every state isn't going to have its quote.
Yeah, I don't think they've shipped here yet.
My last question is maybe you would consider a throwaway, but important for us. Are there any judges in the room that feels nostalgic having been the former chair of this? I want to acknowledge my former colleague, Representative. In case that was too subtle, if you want to acknowledge him. You're feeling nostalgic, not as the chair.
I think he does.
One evening, we were here till 5 a.m. in the morning. That's how long the hearings were. Well, you remember that. Anyways.
Yep, I remember
Good
that.
to see you, Mark.
Okay. Chair Matayoshi?
Thank you, Chair. I had a question about the UI upgrade and wanting an update, but before that, I do want to follow up on one of Rep. Ward's line of questioning, which is 15 teleworkers for a department like yours seems far, far too few. I mean, what's the issue with not allowing more people to telework either hybrid or fully?
Each division has the latitude to, allow telework. I mean, we defer to the administrator because at the end of the day, they know their operations best. We see the value in telework, but certain divisions like workforce development division, they cannot telework because some of the funding, if they if you're not using the American Job Center, for example, you're not going to be able to, it's going to be a disallowed cost. Or, for our disability compensation division, we have hearings officer, and they like to see the people in person because they can tell if they're being, truthful when they're.
That's understandable. Although, I mean, I will say that for hearings and things, I mean, Zoom is a possibility too, but I understand the appeal of having a face-to-face interaction on certain grounds, but surely for the UI office or for other offices, 2% seems awfully low. I'm wondering if you're pushing, maybe you shouldn't be deferring to department heads or kind of lower level people underneath you to make the decision if none of them are, because it seems like almost zero of them are if you're only at 2%, right?
Well, we encourage, because I think we see like I said, we we see the value. I think it's a good way, especially now with the millennials. I think they, the work-life balance is very important to them. So I think it's a good recruitment tool.
And as an elder millennial, I agree, but it seems like there needs to be more of a push from the top, is what I'm saying. So if you don't mind, I mean, I'd really like to see those numbers up. Certain jobs that are face-to-face that require, more of a physical presence, I can see, but I think that a lot more of your workers would be happier, and that might lead to more retention if we had a more robust telework implementation in DLIR. I honestly didn't realize it was that low until you told Rep. Ward. 15 sounds almost like pre-pandemic numbers to me. And we do have the capability to do remote work and things like, remote desktop access and things like that. So I don't think security is too much of an issue. Anyway, if you could look into that further, I'll follow up with you later on that.
No, I'll follow up and follow through with our divisions and offices representative.
Okay, and as part of that follow-up, if you wouldn't mind making maybe some kind of rough list of what jobs are able to telework and which jobs are allowed to currently, I'd appreciate that too, because I think that, again, I acknowledge that not every job will be able to, but if we can get an idea of how many of your jobs could telework either remote, fully, or hybrid, and which of those jobs currently are allowed to, I think we can get a better idea of what percentage we could move up to.
And the thing that you gotta keep in mind too, Rep, is that we were dealing with the Maui wildfires, and it was our priority. I mean, everything else became second, and we wanted to make sure that we did everything we can to help Maui.
Yep, understandable. But I mean, I'm guessing that it's been 2% for a couple of years now, too. So let's, I want to move forward. Let's try to make it better, but maybe we could meet later about that. If you don't mind giving us an update on the UI upgrade, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, the UI upgrade, we're in the process of, finalizing the contract. We hope to launch, hopefully, the ending of this month or early next month. And it's, we're projecting it's gonna complete about, takes about three years to the, go live.
So we're still on track. We're still on track.
Yes.
Okay. And no surprises.
Well, we really have no plan B. I mean, the only, plan B is to make sure we succeed on plan A, which is to get this thing implemented.
Okay. Thanks, Director. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Representative Lamasao.
Thank you, Director. I know our GIAs were dispersed throughout maybe a few agencies this past session, and I just wanted to get an update on like where that's at in DLIR and as far as executing contracts.
I think on the operating, there was about 10 that was assigned to us for operating GIAs from the 114. And, we're in the process now of executing the contract for those 10. And then there was about 74 for CIP GIAs. And then we transferred about 18 to to other state agencies that are more appropriate to administer. And some of the reasons we transferred them is, those were some were ongoing projects in which the state agency had the delegation from prior years. Or the other reason was the receiving state agency has the technical knowledge to administer the grant, and it's more aligned with the purpose of the grant. So 10 operating agencies, operating GIAs were with us out of that 114, and 74, and out of that 74 CIP GIAs, 18 we transferred to other agencies.
Since you did transfer 18, I mean, is that like a regular thing that you folks do? You guys are assigned like majority of the GIAs, and then you folks decide that it's probably not in our purview to oversee, and you guys always just transfer them over to different agencies. I'm just thinking like what would be the best process, I guess, on our end, that it goes to the right agencies.
Well, like I said, the criteria when how we transferred them was especially if it's an ongoing project and the department already started the project, I think it's better that they continue because they have the history and they know the players already, rather than starting from scratch again, and then they have the technical expertise to implement the project.
Okay. Representative Garrett, followed by IU.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question for the Workforce Development Council. Ms. Misa Lucha, if you don't mind. Hi there. Oh, and Chair, just in interest of full disclosure, I am the House designee to the Workforce Development Council. I know a couple of years ago the House changed WDC's, is it sub-org or program ID under the Workforce Development Division. Can you explain to us what the impact of that has been?
Sure. Aloha, everyone. So that was in 2021. And by way of background, the Workforce Development Council is the advisory and planning advisor to the governor on workforce development issues. And in 2021, the program ID of the Workforce Development Council, through the budget, because at that time there were some budget constraints, it was removed and it was domiciled under the Workforce Development Division. I think there are some impacts to that, but I think there is a need to review the present structure. However, that's something that internally I know through the leadership of our director we're grappling with, and we're trying to ensure that we are in compliance with federal laws, and at the same time it would be in the best interest of our workers. As far as what that particular structure would be in the end, I think it's something that needs to be internally discussed and a consensus be made by a lot of other stakeholders. So I don't think I'm at this point in a position to share what the best structure that would fit the needs of the state.
Okay.
But I would defer to, again, the leadership for that purpose.
Okay, thank you.
Chair. You guys are the policy makers, representative, and I think if you guys want to move in that structure, I think we gotta dig a little bit deeper so that we make sure that we're doing the right thing, because we don't want to just we just jump off the cliff and think it's gonna be okay.
Thank you for the question, though.
Okay, thank you both. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Representative Ayu.
Director, just real quick, I'm looking at table 9. You have a bunch of these appropriations that are 100% exceeded. Is this like federal funding that you didn't have in the budget that you got this year? That's why it's 100%? I heard a yes in the background, so I'm going to assume that's yes.
Let me
So
ask
yeah.
my budget guru, Francis, can you come up?
Okay. And then what is the first one exactly? I think it's cut off, and this is also federal funding, but what are we using this funding for?
I think this was the OCS, right, the first one? I think this is probably a refugee. You're talking about the Ukrainian and
Yeah.
Afghanistan? Yeah, I think that's a refugee.
Francis Kagao with the Fiscal Office. So your question is on table 9?
Yep. The first item,
Yeah.
the one on Ukrainian and Afghanistan, I think that's what it says.
Yes, that was for our Office of Community Services, and it's federal funded,
Okay.
and they got additional monies.
Okay. We had Ukrainian and Afghanistan refugees in the state, and that's where the money went to? Is that what that's for? Perfect.
Yes, so we service those
Okay.
individuals.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Representative Ward.
Thank you, Chair. How do you measure your success as a department? I know that's very broad, but you have goals, you have a mission.
Well, we want to make sure that we're fulfilling our mission. I mean, it's a very important and critical mission that the department has. I mean, we're dealing with, people who, with unemployment, that's their safety net.
Do you have metrics to measure each of those?
Yeah, we do. I mean, like for UI, I mean, they have a way of making sure if you're not performing at a certain standard, I mean, even for employees, I mean, they have to process a certain amount of claims. So there's metrics.
More specifically, I'm very concerned about the number of Alice families growing.
Mhm.
Last number was 48% of our labor force. 48% of our people are Alice families, asset limited income challenged earners, working poor, basically. Do you have anything specific that targets Alice families or lessens them? Because the latest report came out that Alice families actually went up a notch. Small, but it went up. In other words, it's not neutralizing or going down, they're getting worse. Have you targeted them or have anything specific for the Alice families?
I mean, not specific, but we have a lot of workforce development, our workforce development division. I mean, we have apprenticeship program that's been, to me, it's one of our best workforce development programs. I mean, you talk about Alice, there's a lot of people who cannot afford to just go to school and not earn any income. And, the apprenticeship I think is a good role model for people to earn and learn. So we're trying to expand it to other non-traditional, trades like healthcare, even hospitality. So we have the internship program. That's sometimes people think it's to get into government. It seems like joining a country club. But if, once they get the exposure and interning for, certain departments, they make connections and meet people.
Could you repeat that? I didn't catch that.
The internship
Working for
program.
government is country club?
Well, some people think that, there's unless you know certain people who are in government, it's like joining a country club.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
You know somebody who, but we
Yeah.
got so many vacancies that I probably think would not. My concern is, if we are the stewards of the people of Hawaii, 1.5 million, and 48%, half of our people don't have enough money to have a roof over their head or food on the table, we're not doing something right. All of us. But the point is, if those 48% are not getting training, we have to diversify the economy. Diversifying the economy has been kind of talked about, but off the actual implementation. So your department training or upgrading skills would seem to be that area. But it doesn't seem like you've got kind of a broad view of everyone, not just Alice families. Is it too specific and discriminatory to just have an Alice family program outreach?
Well,
Train them?
there's a lot of a lot of agencies are involved with workforce development. It's not just Department of Labor. You got UH, you got the DOE, even public safety has their own workforce development. That's why we have a workforce development council that makes sure that they're all integrated.
Well, let me revise it then. What can we do to decrease the number of Alice families in the state of Hawaii?
Housing is it's a persistent problem. It's it's very expensive to live in Hawaii. Compared to, the real estate values, like 2/3 of the value of a property in Hawaii is the land. Whereas you go to, like on the mainland, it's only about 25% or 1/3 of the.
Do we know what percentage of Alice families actually own? I don't know if anybody knows.
Yeah, I don't know what
It would seem
the.
like they would be mostly renters.
Yeah,
probably.
but housing is a big factor in the affordability, and childcare is another challenge.
I didn't expect you to solve it, but the point is, half of our people are right on the borderline of poverty.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions? Okay, I got a quick question. So the GIA, you transferred it out. Did you make any attempt to notify the legislature that you made that change and who is going to oversee the GIA? I'll tell you why. Because one of the things that we wanted to do was the operational GIAs went through the departments, which I understand sometimes have the expertise to administer those GIAs. One of the reasons why we kept the CIP GIAs under the Office of Community Services was because currently under law there is a clawback provision in the law where if that nonprofit or anybody decides to sell that asset, the state retains its percentage of that property. Somebody needs to track it. That's why we wanted to stay under Office of Community Services, and we talked to them about that before, that they start tracking that and that they keep on top of that because somebody needs to be watching out for the state's interest if they sell that asset.
No, I agree, 100%. Somebody's got to be monitoring and making sure.
Yeah,
that
but once you give it to another department, you might lose, control or any kind of idea where that asset is.
No, I totally agree that we should be monitoring that, not just because we need to make sure that we're getting the bang for our buck when we making these investments or giving these GIAs.
So my suggestion is just, one is we'd like to have a list of what you transferred, and two is we'd like to see an update of how you're monitoring those assets and ensuring that the state is able to claw back upon sale of that nonprofit selling that asset.
Okay, we'll provide you that information,
All right.
Chair.
Okay, any further questions, members? Okay, we'd like to thank you for coming in. We are adjourned.